and welcome to the Asylum. I'm your host, Don, and with me, as always, almost, is Jeremiah.
And you guys are liars.
Yeah, the internet as a whole has trolled us.
Collective trolls.
Massive, massive troll.
You told us that Transmorphers was the best, or at least one of the best, Asylum movies. We got excited.
And our
And I
excitement.
have not struggled that hard to stay awake for a 90-minute movie.
I don't think ever.
Ever.
Yeah.
I've struggled to stay awake during movies before, but that's because I was actually really tired. That was a 90-minute movie. And when I think of Asylum movies, I can't think of another time I've struggled that much to stay awake. The last 20 minutes, I almost just turned it off and went, I'm going to bed.
I took a nap right after I finished it. That's how bored I was. That's not a joke. I put it on and then verified that my daughter was still asleep and was like, I guess it's nap time because I'm done. And fell
And
asleep.
what's worst about this one, on paper, it seemed like it should work. It's a mockbuster of Transformers, but resembles nothing about Transformers at all. This is more a War of the Worlds than Transformers.
Yeah,
there is like an alien invasion where they took over Earth, and this is like 300 years after they took over, and for some reason the sun's covered for reasons. And the aliens all look like PS1, PS2 era animation.
Yeah. And they use the same screeching effects that I'm fairly certain was in Mortal Kombat Annihilation, if I remember correctly.
And the sound effects in this movie in general are awful. Like there's a scene where a door is opening. It's just like
or the they're but yeah, so this movie was really disappointing.
A movie. It was not good.
It was so disappointing that we broke our promise because we were going to watch both of them. We're going to watch both of them. We're going to talk about both of them at the same time. And this one was so disappointing that we're going to have to come back and watch the second one when it pops up on the wheel.
I called it. I texted you yesterday and said, can we please not watch both?
Yeah.
Was that a good enough warning to you? That
it was. I knew going in what we were getting into. So here is the story of Transmorphers.
Oh, please tell me, because I don't know how it actually ends. I don't know how the ending makes sense at all, what they're trying to do.
It's pretty. They jump around.
Well, I'll start at the beginning and then you'll take over, okay? Introduction basically says Earth made contact with an alien race and sent them a message, and they responded by basically invading Earth and taking over Earth. And the humans went underground to survive and then jumped 300 years later.
To now.
And no one's pasty enough for that, but oh well, we'll go with it. And so that's where the movie starts, with an introduction that honestly, I'm pretty sure I messaged you about the introduction. And I was like, well, that's certainly an introduction. And the first thing they credit is the visual effects company that they're proud of, maybe?
Yeah. So we fast forward 300 years from the text intro. And they say like they made the sky like this, and it shows the sky, and it's all kind of clouded over, Matrix style, right?
It's been raining for hundreds of years.
Yep. And so then we get like the survivors. We get our introduction to General Van Ryder, who is a female general, little girl.
Who apparently works in the music department of the Asylum, because she has a lot of music credits in a lot of movies.
She's the female general, the leader of the military, essentially, and a lesbian. So, power to her. That's awesome. And this movie was made, 2008,
2007?
Yeah, so yeah, pretty forward thinking. So
Hey, they like their lesbians in Asylum movies.
that is a fact.
Sometimes those scenes are filmed better than the rest of the movie.
Most of the time. So there's like a meeting of the various different council or the various different like leaders. And essentially, they've broken up their society into like the military group, the scientist group, the farmer group, which they don't really go into. They really just go into science and military.
And there's a
The
civilian
science,
representative liaison that talks to them from time to time.
yeah. So the science guys have come up with a way for humanity to finally fight back against the Transmorphers. Um, but what they need the military to do is they need them to capture a transmorpher alive so they can do something to it. It's not really well explained. So the general's like, okay, cool. I got a crack team that I'm going to send out to do this. And that crack team, bunch of bad bunch of bamps that then proceed to get their houses rocked. They just
Oh,
get
and they mentioned casually as they go up, saying, by the way, they also read minds.
oh, is it true that they read minds? No, that's not true. It's true. They read minds. Um, so they send them out. They get completely annihilated, and so we get back to humanity, and they're sitting around. They're like, okay, so what do we do now? And so this crazy lady is
Who
like, oh,
apparently is a pilot, has like a group of pilots.
she's a commander of some sort. I don't really know.
I think they
But she's
all
like,
flew the fighter plane things
yeah,
that they
she's from
clearly have underground, ready to go. I don't know how they
uh,
tested any of them.
tunnels. Um, so she's like, oh, well, you obviously need Mitchell. And they're like, no. And she's like, look, man, this dude somehow managed to survive on Earth above ground, which nobody's been able to do ever. And he's incapable of being mind read, which now apparently everybody knows that they can be mind read. But
Well,
this
because
dude's
they
incapable.
proved it on the thing.
Yeah.
Also, it seemed like in that conversation, which I didn't want to go back and actually check. They also mentioned he's like one of the few that have actually killed these Transmorphers before. But if
Yeah.
you go later in the movie, that's a freaking lie because they're like plop plop
They're
plop
not
plop.
like in the beginning, somebody says something along the lines of like, nobody's ever killed one. Or like nobody ever kills these things. We're gonna destroy them though because we're badasses.
And
And
then
then
in
they
the final, they're
proceed.
like, you have all sorts of weapons that just make you go.
Yeah, they took them down with pistols, like with laser pistols.
They had
Okay,
like frisbees that kill them.
yeah. But anyway, so Mitchell is supposed to be some sort of Banff. Mitchell
He's
had
frozen for treason. For treason,
yeah,
he's
he's been
tried to do a
frozen.
coup.
Tried to do a coup because he wanted to fight back, essentially, and humanity hasn't been fighting. Humanity has just been trying to survive until they could figure something out. So he gets unfrozen, and the general is like, "Okay, we're gonna make you a captain," which their rankings make no sense, and I don't want to get into it.
Did you notice that he had just as many stars on his jacket as the general did
So I did notice that.
in the same location?
About that.
I'm pretty
Like I said,
sure, honestly, I think they just gave him a jacket and
yeah.
they didn't care.
The their military structure doesn't really make any sense, so I don't want to talk about it.
Neither does their humanity structure. So, yeah.
Also true. As per usual, the Asylum doesn't know anything about the military, and it shows very strongly in this movie. So he gets unfrozen. He's like, okay, I need at least one. I need my lieutenants. I need my guys. And she's like, no, I'm not. I'm not giving you the guys that helped you try to lead the coup. And he's like, okay, well, here's the thing, lady. This is like actually one of my favorite parts of the movie because I thought it was
That's
really
because he's an actual, like, tries in this movie. He
yeah.
tries.
He's
Everyone else
one of the,
is monotone and talks like this, and it's a little echoey as they go, and they are, like, reading lines from cue cards that are on the wall. And the
him
first
him
10 minutes was painful. Until he woke up, it was pretty painful to hear anyone talk.
him and his lieutenant Itchy are literally the only two people that act in
The
this
entire personality of the show.
yeah. Anyway, so he's like talking to the general, and he's just like, "Look, lady, I've been frozen for 5 years, and during those 5 years, I was still like, oh, like my brain was still active. So I've been dreaming for 5 years about a world where we lived above ground, and I got to see the sun. every day. So, you can either do what I'm telling you to do, or you can freeze me again, and I'll just go back to that dream. And so she's just like, I'll give you a one. So then that's how we get Itchy, the other guy who's actually
But also, this general had a thing against him because she A was the one that put him there for treason, and
and
B married his ex-wife
yeah.
or wife.
Uh,
I don't know if they got divorced.
I
She
don't,
just married her.
yeah, so she married his love as well as arrested him and had him frozen for treason. So she doesn't really like the guy, understandable, but he's their last hope, demolition man style, right? So he gets Itchy, and then they put together a crack team of the currently existing ossifers to go out and do exactly what the
That's
science
because
guy
the
wants.
people he was given were terrible, and he's like, we need actual people. And
Yep.
so they recruit the people that were friendlier to him before.
Yeah, like Sander, was that her name? The crazy girl.
I, I like it when the ladies like, you're not coming back alive anyway, so we're just figuring out what to do with all your stuff already. You know.
Yeah, and then there's like a completely unnecessary all-woman fight scene that disappointingly did not end up in a lesbian sex scene, which is, given that this is an Asylum movie that came out in the mid 2000s, I was expecting it, and it didn't show up. And I was kind of disappointed. That's upsetting.
Yep.
So they go do the thing the scientist guy wants them to do. The scientist guy explains that
Okay, I'm
like
not
we
sure.
can't
Scientist guy wants them to take one of these alive. They're cutting this thing open at a place offsite because they didn't want them to
find them.
find them, and then they just realize that that is not armor around them. That is their actual body, and they just literally cut open into this alien when they peeled back his armor, and the thing traumatized and died, which made sense. I like that fact that I actually mentioned it.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, so the reason they can track them is because their fuel cells are still working. So they end up bringing a live one back to Zion. And that obviously cues in the rest of the Transmorphers as to where humanity is. So Transmorphers start to mobilize. Then we find out that Mitchell is actually a robot, not a human. And so he
and they already
gets,
had a sex bot, I mean, a fighting bot with them this whole time, who was the
yes,
third one, and I was half expecting the second one to be like the general or his wife or something
yeah,
that would just
but they,
pop out and be like, by the way, she's also a robot. Oh. Ooh.
yeah, they don't really ever explain what happened to the second one. But he was the first one. So he's number one.
Which
And
is
we
why
have
he can
number
never be mind read.
Yeah. And then we have number three, who is a sexy robot types.
She looks like she's
So
from Austin Powers.
yes, she looks like a female. So the scientist guy explains like, yeah, he built Mitchell. Nobody really questioned how a human had lived on Earth when like nobody's lived on Earth for at least the last 100 years, and that like he programmed him to have more humanity than a human actually does, which makes absolutely no sense. But whatever. So they're like, okay, so what we got to do is we need to get these fuel cells out of here. And if we take them to this tower, which they don't really explain what it is, they're like, if we take them to this tower and you do something with them in the tower, it'll have some sort of detrimental effect that'll help humanity and it'll screw over the Transmorphers. And
Something like that.
at the same time, his ex love, General's wife, happens to just be at that tower because they got separated. So he goes there, runs into her, tells her that he loves her. They infiltrate the tower. They go to a place that is, or the place they need to get to is like the core, and it's guarded by these uh, lasers that lock onto bio signatures.
Oh,
And so
yes. And he goes,
is
aha, I'm a robot. I can go
I'm
through.
a robot. I'm fine. And he just walks through without an issue. So he walks in, goes into this little room in there that is just a room with a room in it, um, and discharges the fuel cells into the tower, which destroys the tower, sort of. But what it really does is it disrupts whatever the electrical signal that is going to all the transmorphers is, which essentially shuts them all down even though they're biomechanicals. I'm not sure how that works, but
I
whatever.
have no
Shuts them
idea.
all down.
And then the
And
sun comes out.
and it brings the sun back out, which leads me to believe that that tower is what was blocking out the sun with its signal.
And humanity is so well that in the final shot there is an airplane flying in the background.
Fact. And that's essentially it. That's the story. The inconsistencies are glaring.
He didn't get to
It's
see the sun because he dead, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. He like steps out of the pod at the end, and he's like, "Oh, I guess I'm fine, awesome," and then he just collapses and dies.
And then his ex-wife gets to kiss her
Sure.
wife. And movie's done, and it has nothing to do with Transformers at all. There are a couple of robots that do transform into like giant tanks, and then it's like blow things away in front of them. But
Yeah,
it's terrible and looks awful. And at the time, I thought the tower was transforming at one time. I wasn't exactly sure what was going on,
I think it did. Not. I don't
but it's not Transformers. It is not a Transformers movie, which makes me terrified of what the heck they're going to do with Pacific Rim.
know. Yes, very much so. But yeah, so that was Transmorphers. The special effects are they look like they were made on a PS1. The sound is not great. Most of the lines
There's
are
very
kind
echoey,
of yeah, they're very echoey. The acting is
and the
subpar
sound
at
effects are
best,
pretty bad, like very bad.
very generic. I couldn't believe there wasn't a Wilhelm scream. I was waiting the entire movie for a
Yeah, they had
Wilhelm.
killer destructive frisbees.
It did.
I also don't understand how the aliens never found their city when they literally come out of the same hole every time, and they killed the first team that came out of said hole.
Because because I guess transmorphers aren't that smart. I don't know. But
Something
yeah,
like that.
so overall, this movie was terrible.
It was very
And
boring. I'm gonna put it. There is terrible, and then there was boring. Like we have Pod People is terrible and kind of offensively bad. Like it assaulted your ears. You're muted.
uh,
Uh,
Battle Star Wars also terrible, but it wasn't boring. It at least
this
was.
was very boring.
This movie
Now,
was
now I will
upsetting.
say this about this movie. So Pod People was terrible and like assaulted your ears. Like it hurt to listen to that movie and watch it. I would definitely put this above Pod People just for the fact that it did not assault my sanity. It didn't hurt to watch it that way. Like,
That's fair.
but it had zero charm, zero personality, and a lot of these movies at least have something awful. And like Mega Piranha, those piranhas growing and shrinking all the time was the fact that they landed and exploded. You know, there was charm to it. This had
The
none,
statue, the
zero.
statue at the end of Bigfoot, like,
Oh
or
yeah, the ugliest thing I've ever seen. You know, like the one we saw 100 Degrees Below was a significantly better movie than this. Well,
I mean, this doesn't come anywhere near holding a candle to like Flight World War II, which was phenomenal. Like, especially for Asylum. Like this movie, it doesn't have a reason to want to see it
it
at all.
felt like I don't understand why this movie exists. I understand why it exists, but like, who thought of this as
It, you
like
know,
the hoorah for Transformers?
it
It
kind of
shouldn't
makes
be
me
that
think
hard.
of, kind of makes me think of Battlefield Earth, in all honesty, because of like kind of the way that it makes very little sense and just could have been so much better. And it was hyped up in my brain, and then this is what we got. Very
So
very similar to
I'm
Battlefield.
thinking Lee Scott might be the worst director of one of the worst. There's the other guy too, Eric Forsberg, his name was one of the worst directors that they have in the Asylum. Because when you think about it, we've done Exorcism of Gail Bowers was his. I did not
Mm-hmm.
like that movie. I know you thought it was at least okay. Pirates of Treasure Island was his. He did Dracula's Curse, which we have not seen yet, but I have no hope for that movie to be good. He did the 9/11 Commissioner Report,
Which we have been hoping to never see.
which does have your the hot chicken.
She's also in. I'm pretty sure she's in Dracula's Curse too.
So
A new favorite.
we'll see. But I don't trust his.
Yeah.
This movie's really boring. Now, here's the good thing about there's a prequel coming. Already out. Prequel that we'll watch.
At some point when it pops up on the paper.
The prequel, he did not direct. I don't believe he wrote it. And it has different people, and it's about the invasion.
So it's about the actual invasion that we just hear about.
But this guy who did this one, he's the one who produced Jolly Roger. He produced War of the Worlds and wrote it. He did Invasion of the Pod People. If I see his name, I think I'm just gonna be like I don't have faith when I see his name right now, at all.
Scott, Leigh Scott.
Yeah. I can't.
Yeah.
Because
so overall,
they're terrible.
On our constantly sliding.
He followed this up with Pod People, by the way. That was the movie that came out 2 months later.
I would rather watch Pod People again, honestly.
Well, you'd rather watch a minute and a half of Pod People.
That's fair. I would rather watch Dragon Ball Evolution than watch.
So would I.
This movie was so bad. So on our sliding scale, it's right there around Pod People. It's not good. I would not recommend this movie.
I will never watch this again.
Yeah, I will never see this again. I would not recommend this movie to anybody. Just keep it off the list. Unless you're prepared for...
don't watch it. There is nothing tantalizing about this movie that is worth watching.
Unless you're preparing for Asylum Armageddon. Because it's a staple of Asylum. And it's part of the Asylum Armageddon movie. So what else do we need to watch for that? Atlantic Rim? Something else? Another one of their giant kaiju movies?
Yeah, well, there's 2 Atlantic Rim movies.
Which I'm looking forward to. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, this movie was so bad that we called an audible on the audible that we called last video that we were not going to watch the sequel until it pops up on the picker. Because I just don't want to go back to those sequels.
Well, here's some good things about the prequel. It's the first Asylum movie released on Blu-ray. It stars Bruce Boxleitner, so that's already an actor I know. You know who Bruce Boxleitner is? He's most famous for being Tron, like the character Tron, Alan Bradley, in that series. And he was in the newer one. He was one of the main characters in Babylon 5, like 80 plus episodes of Babylon 5. He's in NCIS. Supergirl. He's the president in Supergirl.
Okay.
He's a well-known actor in genre stuff, and he's at least good. He's in Chuck. I trust Bruce Boxleitner.
At least the prequel will have a known actor in it. It's nice when Asylum has a known actor, whereas Transmorphers didn't have anybody.
And it's directed by someone completely different. It is written by Dick Van Dyke's son, who, well, he makes movies.
The Van Dyke family does have a weird connection to Asylum. Because isn't there an Asylum movie that is the Van Dyke family?
Yeah, his son is a writer and actor and director in Asylum.
Right, but isn't there like a movie that's like the Van Dyke family? It's like 4 of them in one movie.
Oh, probably.
I remember us talking about this back.
Like Shane Van Dyke, who wrote this one, he also stars in it, apparently. He is also in Titanic 2, Super Shark. He directed A Haunting in Salem.
Wow.
I'm just saying, it's at least going to be different. And we'll see what the wheel makes us do. Maybe the wheel will make us suffer. Maybe it won't.
If that's what pops up on the wheel, I will be very upset.
No, I think you'll laugh.
Do you have screenshots we want to show them, or do we want to just move on?
They do not need to see screenshots of that movie. They really don't. It looks. Think of a PS2, and not like a PS2 third-party game that was done for no love, and that's what it looks like. And the sound effects. Think of what you're able to do in your own house, and it's worse. So let's do this picker wheel.
Oh Lord! All right. Wheel of Asylum. Turn, turn, turn. Tell us the movie that we will burn. Oh yes, yes.
I'm gonna get in so much trouble.
Oh, your Steph's gonna be so upset with you when you
You
watch.
might have to watch this one on your own.
I might. Jailbait is a movie that I think we vaguely talked about it last video. It
Hmm.
stars
The hot chick, the sister who clearly wanted to bang her brother,
what was her name again? Sarah. My
Sarah
new
something.
my new favorite Asylum actress, in which she plays a 17-year-old girl in prison.
Orange
And
is the new black. It's Orange is the new black.
yeah, it's Orange is the New Black, the Asylum take on it. When I heard of this movie, I was very excited about it, and now I get to watch it, so I'm pretty stoked.
And it is
Um,
available on.
Everything.
Uh, do not
How,
search for this movie on Google. I am warning you. It'll show websites that might have jailbait on it, but not this movie. It is
yeah,
on Roku, Vudu, Tubi, Redbox, and Pluto.
yeah. So it's available. Unknown if Jeremiah will join me for the review on Jailbait. I don't think that Steph is gonna let him watch it. I think that's up there with
There is nudity and IMDb from this movie.
yeah. I think it's up there with Halloween Pussy Trap Kill Kill as movies that it's probably not allowed to watch. But tune in maybe next week ish to Welcome to the Asylum to hear at least my thoughts on Jailbait. Yeah. Okay, thanks. Bye.